foliage at its fullest. And days like this, when the light is flat, are going to become more common. So today I'm going to explore this type of light and share with you some tips, compositions, settings, the way I approach a situation in landscape photography when the light is flat, like today. As a landscape photographer, you need to understand light and also use it to your advantage. So in a situation like this, when the light is flat, I would enter in the forest. I would not stay outside of the forest, because flat light means that I will lose perspective, shape, proportion, texture. As a side tip, in a situation like this, I think you should use rubber boots rather than normal hiking boots. My first subject for today is going to be fallen leaves. They look really well, they are colorful, these leaves have an interesting pattern. Sometimes you get an interesting leaf. You can also photograph them on the surface of the water, but you need to look for a water that is clear, not muddy. Now, for this type of shot to work, you need to find some kind of interesting elements in this foliage, because every leaf looks the same, but you still can find some green leaves. Maybe one of them looks really different, maybe are fallen on a really interesting surface like a dead log or green moss or something. For example, this log with green moss on it, it's the perfect example when you have an interesting surface that the leaves are fallen onto, and that can create a photo that looks a lot more interesting. Settings are f8 ISO 100 because I'm using the tripod, and the exposure time really doesn't matter. You adjust it to what you want. It's not windy, the leaves are not going to move. But f8 it's more than enough because it's a flat surface and everything will be in focus. I'm also using a polarizer. Sometimes when you're doing this type of flat shots, the polarizer has no effect, but sometimes just a tiny bit. So it's up to you if you're going to use a polarizer or not. As you may see around me, this forest is pure chaos. It's not the forest where I'm used to photographing. So because of that, I'm going to use 70 to 200 millimeter, because the longer focal length will help me isolate things a lot more easier than my usually lens 24 to 105. Found an interesting subject, and it's a group of trees that are all emerging from almost the same spot. I think they look really interesting, and what is happening behind them is that I'm having all this beautiful foliage on the trees, and because of that the contrast is really high between the trunks of the trees and the yellow and oranges and reds of the leaves behind them. Now, my first approach was in a horizontal format. Also, I used the polarizer and got rid of that glitter on the lower part of the photo, on the green leaves. And I'm also making sure I'm not including any sky in the photo, because I only want the trunks and then those beautiful colors of fall behind the trunks. It's a simple shot, but I think the contrast between the elements can make it work. Now, let's see, in terms of settings, I would stay at f8 just to create a little bit more separation between the trees and the background. Okay, so f8 ISO 100, and the exposure time 0.4 seconds. You notice these ferns over here, and I will try something that is completely different from the normal shots. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my headlamp I'm going to focus my camera on an area of this fern, and I'm going to try to match the light that is going to come from my headlamp. This way I will have a really high separation, because the fern is going to be into the light, and the rest of the scene will look a little bit darker. I think the tip of the day would be to have fun as a landscape photographer, be creative, look for interesting things, and most importantly, don't go to a place with preconceived ideas, because you don't know what Mother Nature has in store for you. Nature is unpredictable. This morning I thought I'm going to have a really beautiful sunrise on the shore of a lake, and when I got there, there was nothing interesting, so I decided to go inside the forest and make the best of it. So I hope you learned something from this vlog, and if you did and you appreciate it, maybe you leave a comment. Maybe you want to learn more about landscape photography. There is a link in the description of this video to my website, where you can find my workshops and my ebook on landscape photography. So yeah, until next time, keep on photographing, because it's the only way to get better. Bye bye.